July the 7th, 2020. This is the Village of North Bennington Board of Trustees meeting, our regular meeting for business. And tonight we are going to start by review and approval of the minutes from our last meeting, which was also a Zoom meeting. I will, because we're just the board right now and our and Cat TV, I will forego the usual discussion on how to use Zoom and how to raise your hand and ask questions. But if we do have people pop on to the meeting, I may review that process. So did people have a chance to review the minutes from last meeting? And is there a motion to approve the minutes? So moved.
Second.
Seconded. And any discussion? Matthew.
He might come back.
But we certainly have enough to approve that by unanimous consent unless there is some objection. And how about, let's see, I'm gonna get so we'll consider that to be approved by unanimous consent. Just gonna get the agenda. And our monthly warrant and bills. So the warrant, well, let's do the regular. There's a payroll warrant and then an additional one for June. And we don't have Mary with us right now, but I think that's fine for now. I think she may come on. If somebody gets a text from her that says that she can't join for some reason, please let me know. So the regular warrant that I see for July is in the amount of $10,521.26.
Is it the payroll, John?
That is the payroll. Yep.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Second. And is there any discussion or objection? So we have Louis Brown, a day worker, and Joshua Motzer is our, I guess you'd call it an intern or student worker. I interviewed him, and he's a very nice young man. And if you get a chance to say hello to him, I'm sure you would find him to be nice as well. And then the only other expenses are for Norm and Justin. So unless there is an objection, and seeing none, we will approve that warrant by unanimous consent. And move on to, there were some additional expenses in June. There were 3 checks, one to Norm, one to Justin as their payment in lieu of insurance, and one pay period for the intern Josh Motzer. And that amount is $4,022.63. And is there a motion to approve that? So moved by Mr. Patterson.
And I will second.
There's a second by Mr. Boudreau. And is there any discussion on that one? And any objection to our approving that? Seeing no objection, that will be approved by unanimous consent. So, hello, Mary. So we have approved the payroll warrant for July and the additional expenses for June.
Okay,
And we're moving on now to the expense warrant for July. Okay, so that's the whole document. I will try to share that with everybody. Does everybody have that on their computer to look at, or would you like me to share that? Oh, actually, why don't I can share it. That way, it's part of the recording. So we have, looks like, the total amount is going to be $29,197.26. And the largest expenses being our annual payments that are approved by the voters for McCullough Library and Parent Recreation. So $10,000 to McCullough Library and $3,000 to Parent Recreation.
well, and both of those are partial, but we don't have the funds to make the full payments.
Okay.
I do have a schedule. Lori has a copy. I forgot to attach it to all of you guys, but I'll send it out. Of like we did last year, where we scheduled out for all of the recipients when they will get their payments, and we can get that in their hands.
Okay. Those are those payments are going forward, though, are they not?
Yes.
So the voters approved these amounts at the annual meeting, which would have
Correct.
been March, but ended up being June. And so it's not. These were made. Oh, okay. So these are made the very beginning of the fiscal year. So obviously, in theory, we would have the whole fiscal year to make the payments, but we want to get these to the organization so that they can use them.
And virtually all of it will be paid by November. And there's a couple things like the outdoor sculpture show that we'll do in May, because we've already paid for this year, the one that's going on right now. So that will give them time to plan for the 2021 show.
Can I ask about the payment to John Lamson, 408.29?
Oh,
Yes.
those are, that's your payment for this Zoom meeting for tonight, or the one you submitted. And the $350, which all of the trustees are getting tonight, is 1/3, almost 1/3 of your new trustees' fees for the year,
Okay.
because we increased that for all of you.
That was just the number I had. I knew there was about $50 for the Zoom, but so that's in addition to the $350 is the.
Correct. And I think it was $58 or something like that, the bill.
Okay. Any other questions on that? Is there a motion to approve the warrant for July 7, 2020?
Moved.
Moved by Mr. Boudreau, second by Mr. Patterson, and is there any further discussion or objection? I'm just going to make sure I see everybody. I can see everyone now.
I do have a comment.
A question.
Yeah, I just wanted to let you all know that we will be making a payment to People's Bank for the credit card, the monthly bill that comes in on that. Lori just didn't get it in the mail in time for here, so that will we'll put that on the next warrant, but just be aware that you're gonna see that. And then one other check that I didn't get out, Lori had the bill in, but I didn't get it in here. And that is the PO box fee for, the zoning coordinator. But that's gonna just be a next year's expense anyway, so.
Okay.
For current year, we are in next year.
Without objection, we can approve the warrant for July. All right, so approved. Mary, were there any other? I'm just looking quickly at the email. Did you want us to, while we're discussing expenses, is there anything else you'd like, or do you want to wait for the the treasurer's report?
I can wait.
Okay. I would like to. I would like to exercise at least a little bit of discretion by taking up the, since we don't have any citizens here, I'd like to take up the rules of procedure motion, because that actually could help us tonight. If we adopt the rules, we can just, it'll help us move just a little bit quicker. One of the things that is, I don't know if people had a chance to review those. If you wanted to, you could. If you didn't, I'm ready to go ahead and make my proposal to adopt these, and you guys can decide whether you're ready to do that, or whether you'd like more time to review, or whether you'd like to change something. But the idea is to not follow such strict protocol in areas where it's not necessary to do so, especially in small meetings such as ours. You don't need to have a motion and then a second and then a vote and all that. It can just be a motion to approve, and if there isn't objection, you can just move on instead of bothering with the formality of having a second and everything. So let me just pull that up so that I can share with you. Let's see.
John, are these recommendations by the VLCT?
Yeah, I'm just gonna pull it up so that we can just look at it together real quick. I thought I sent it as an attachment.
You did. You did, but I don't know how to share it on here, so I can't do that.
I got it.
Got it?
Okay, so are we seeing this?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's there.
So the Vermont League of Cities and Towns gives a proposed rules of procedure, and this is it. The only thing that I changed was instead of municipality, I put Village of North Bennington. And then everything else in here, except for, I changed everything to indicate our municipality. But the only other place that there are changes, it indicated. I did a track changes so you could see where I deleted stuff. And so the first place that there was any change was under number 5 here, where it said motions made by members of the body, and you can choose to have a second or not have a second. And I chose that we do not require a second. If somebody has a difference of opinion on that, that's fine, but it would, it doesn't change the fact that a motion can still only pass if it receives a majority of votes. It just means that you don't have to bother with a second person. The reason that you have a second is that you don't want a sort of argumentative person just making a whole bunch of motions to either stall or to just be heard. when there isn't even two people that are in support of the idea. It's kind of to eliminate that annoyance, but I'm confident that we don't have that problem.
So my question is, so the way it would work from there is, I would make a motion, you would ask for further discussion, and if there is none, we just move on. So it's
Correct.
kind of the same way we do things now, it's just without the second.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Yeah. Makes sense.
And then this is also, number 6 is already basically how we conduct business, which is that a member, and they mean a member of the board, not of the body here. So a member of the board can speak to any motion without being recognized. So anybody on the board can just speak to a motion and doesn't need to be formally recognized by the chair. Now, if anybody from the audience can't just jump, they have to be recognized by the chair, but a member of the board can always speak to a motion. The other part of that, number 6, is that a motion to close or limit debate will, and you can choose, will not be entertained. I guess if somebody has a different opinion on that, I feel like in some situations it might be warranted to be able to close debate and just say, look, it seems like there's a lot of, we've got other business to take care of. Maybe we can take that up the next meeting, or we can schedule a follow-up. So is there any problems with number 6?
Nope.
Okay. Number 9 is that these rules would require a 2/3 vote to be changed. And they do recommend that they're readopted annually, and Bennington does do that as well, but it would just be this meeting, I would suggest, or actually, it could be the meeting after the annual meeting, or it could be the first meeting of the fiscal year, either way, but you would just, at a certain meeting, just readopt the same rules. They would continue to apply even though they were not readopted, but this date down here would, change to the most recent year as long as you readopted it. Actually, I think there's a place to sign. There's probably a place to sign at the end. Yeah, so the date here, the signatures and date will change as we adopt it. That could be just a simple majority, but I think, when you're talking about rules of procedure, you don't want to feel like you're muscling somebody out. So 2/3 is usually better in that kind of way. The agendas, anybody that wants to be added to the agenda should contact the clerk. I think that's the way we generally operate, and that we would continue to operate. This says, this just selects, and you can see what was deleted over here, sort of. This is for posting the agenda and in a public place, and it designates the place, so a location of at least 2 public places. And then down here, I put that the typical public places would be the post office, the library, and Powers Market. So usually I think the post office and Powers are the required ones, and then we try to get the library, but they're not always open. So, and then business conduct. So this says that business is to be conducted as it appears on the agenda, and that's so that if somebody looked at the agenda and wanted to come for a particular part of the meeting, that they would have some idea of when to come, and so that you can adjust that, but you would have to have the majority of the trustees vote to change it, as opposed to just changing it as you wanted. Just stop me if there are any issues.
Yeah, well, John, on this one, you've got Did you mean to change it to Monday? It used to be the first Tuesday after the first Wednesday.
Wednesday.
And in number one, you got it following the first Monday.
Oh, it's supposed to be following the first Wednesday?
Yes.
Because that, we could technically have meetings on the second of the month if the first falls on a Monday.
Yeah, that would be right.
There you go.
That's in the charter, so we can't change that.
Right, yeah. I just made a mistake there, sorry about that.
Oh, look at that, you fixed it. My question is, when you got into the overriding the rules that we make now being either two-thirds of a five-member board is so a majority is 60%. So two-thirds is, in our case, 4 out of the 5, right?
Like 3.5 out of the 5.
Right.
If somebody's on the fence, then they count. Well, yeah, no, it would have to be,
So four,
even though that's not, I mean, that's 4/5, it's not 2/3, but you'd have to have at least 2/3, which would not be 3 of them.
right.
I didn't make any changes to this. It really also is to cover our backs because it specifies what the procedures are for regular meetings, special meetings, emergency meetings, etc. So we know what the procedure is, but also that the public would know as well. And I didn't make any changes here to the way we do emergency meetings. You basically, if there is an emergency that you need to have an unforeseen meeting, then you just provide as much notice as you can, basically. And sometimes that just means sticking a big up on the door of the depot or up down at Powers, and that's all you can do. But you try and be as open as you can. And this is also the rule that we've been relying on that was a member of the body may attend by electronic means without being physically present. That would continue to be the case. We're operating under a temporary rule right now, but even when that rule goes away, any member could attend electronically if they wanted to. Just have to let us know. And then public participation. So this, there is a couple of things here. So at the conclusion of discussion of an agenda item, you do have the option to say at the beginning, but I think it's better to sort of introduce the item that's being discussed first. So at the conclusion of discussion amongst the trustees, but before action is taken, there would be a 10-minute comment period. And that we could change that to any amount of time that you want, but I just figured 10 minutes was sort of something to start with. And then it does say by majority vote, the body may increase the time as it sees necessary. And I put majority as opposed to unanimous or 2/3 there. Because I think that if a majority of the trustees feel like we need to talk about something a little bit more, that should be respected as opposed to having like a 2/3 requirement. Any issues there? Okay. And these are just procedures that we've followed before. The comments should be directed to the chair. People need to be recognized before speaking. If they've already spoken, let other people have a chance first. And then they actually said that these type of things are actually important. Order and decorum shall be observed by all persons at the meeting. So even though that seems like that it goes without saying. It's needed, you have to actually have it in approved rules in order to enforce it. So, if somebody comes in and is very upset over something, as long as they're expressing their opinion in a reasonable manner, then that's fine. That's what we're here for, is to listen to that. But if they're in, so out of control that they're causing a disturbance, or they're, threatening somebody, or acting inappropriately, then we would have the authority to ask them to leave or to end the meeting. But the reason that we can do that is because we've approved rules that says we can do it. And then it gives a process here for the chair to follow, that you would call the meeting to order, remind the members of the rules, declare a recess or table an issue, adjourn the meeting to a time and date certain, and order the constable to remove a disorderly person from the meeting. So,
Who's our constable?
well, I could be wrong, but I think that constable in this context can mean any person that we designate as our enforcement. So we could just call Bennington Police, essentially.
I think Mary
Or
should.
Nor? Or
Yeah.
Mary?
I mean, we can appoint some other person as constable. That's fine, and we could do it at the time. Actually, I don't think that would be improper. But I don't really see that as an issue. I would probably be more apt to say, we're just going to have to end this meeting if you're going to refuse to leave. I mean, I don't want to put other people in that position.
Yeah, the easy thing to do is you announce a recess,
Yeah.
and then once we recess, you say, if you do not leave, we will call the police.
Right. That's good. Yeah. Okay, so and it does. I think it says somewhere in here. I may have missed it, but that the chair can make a motion as well, and so it makes it a little bit more informal, because that I don't know, that rule is. I'm not exactly sure what purpose that rule serves, but are we comfortable adopting these rules, or would you like to take another, do something else with it?
May I ask a question?
Sure.
So my question would be, when, not if, but when the village gets a website, would you have to redo these rules of procedures and revote on them to say that these agendas would be on the website?
Because what we removed was if the body has a designated municipal website, insert the following. So yeah, we can amend, like it says in there, we can amend it at any time with 2/3 vote, and as soon as we got the website, we could insert the wording here that's required by statute anyways, that we post our agenda on the website 48 hours prior, and also it doesn't. This is as it relates to notice, but we also have the requirement that the minutes be posted after the fact as well.
Perfect.
And I'll talk about the website when we get to that item.
One thing I was wondering about is, should we consider moving up, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but it seems like public comment is usually at the end of the agenda. Is that right?
Um,
Generally?
No, it's always at the beginning.
Okay, never mind.
Beginning.
I was like, I think we should have it at the beginning because we always.
That's where it is.
Okay.
Only, like Aaron, sometimes people have, they're coming for a specific, like, presentation, like.
Okay. That's great. All right. That
you know,
makes sense.
Would be under new business or something like that.
Like the cell tower or.
Yeah, right.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Then
Yeah,
perfect.
That's our general citizen comment issues that we didn't know about beforehand are usually item number 3.
Okay. Perfect.
But citizens always have the opportunity to comment on any of the new business under 10 or old
Okay. Okay. Perfect.
All right. And let's see.
So John, will you be making these changes? If you make these if it's approved and you make these changes, why don't you send me a finalized copy and then I can put it in, I can make copies of it and put it at the depot and have them on hand in case someone wants to know the rules of procedure.
Yes, yep, I will. That's another good thing about the website is hopefully it can keep us a little bit more organized ourselves. But so if we approve that tonight, I will draft this so it's not marked up and it doesn't have the parentheses and stuff like that, and just send it over. I'll send it to everybody.
Now, do we have to sign this?
Probably.
It's at the bottom. There's a
Yeah,
small-
but I think that is the process, is that anything that we approve, we can send around for signatures after the fact. I think the law said that for expenses, they weren't actually requiring signature anymore, but like, so we haven't been signing the warrants, but the House Bill 681 allowed that to be the case. So, but I don't think there's any harm in just sending it around for signatures. Is everybody fairly easy to receive and sign and scan back, or would that be problematic?
Yeah, I'm also good. I mean, Lori sometimes will just leave it on her door.
Yeah.
If she wants to do that, I'm happy to go up there and
Yeah, what I've done in the past is just leave it on the door with a pen, and whenever you want, come sign it.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, and then we'd all have it on the same document. That would be
Right, and then I'll make copies and distribute those.
yeah, I'm good with that. And everyone else is.
All right, so I will try to get that to you tonight then, so that you could do that whenever you want.
Okay.
Okay. So is there a motion to approve the new rules of procedure?
So moved.
So moved and seconded by Ms. Lowry. And any further discussion? Any objection? Hearing no objection, that motion is approved by unanimous consent. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Our next item is the treasurer's report. Now Mary is bespectacled, so she can.
Yes. So I can see. Well, you know, you get to a certain age and you just don't even trust your eyes anymore. And then I had to unmute myself. So a couple of things. Number one, the preliminary end of month, I sent you 2 documents. One is the where we are versus a budget. It's a little bit hard to understand because some things don't line up. There's a lot more detail, and it doesn't look like the same format that we put in the annual plan, or in the annual book. So I also sent you that one, which is also a preliminary. You probably want to start with that, the one that's a preliminary year end, and it is the same format that goes in the annual book. We are going to end, roughly speaking, because I know there's still some June expenses that are not in there. We I have, Lori, we haven't seen anything from the fire department, have we?
Not lately.
And I know there's a couple of things that we always pay for them that we haven't gotten. And I know you got their, whatever their fuel is, but that was April and May. So we don't have their June truck fuel bill. So there are a few little things like that. But we should end up the year with about a $50,000 fund balance. And some major reasons for that. And I did put some notes on that, on that document, not the one that goes in the annual plan. Yeah, which one did I put the thing on? At any rate, one of those has some notes on it. But the $50,000 is all really in the highway department. A couple of things going on there. We carried in $57,000 to do all that road work and stuff, and it included some highways and some culverts, not highways, sidewalks and culverts. The sidewalks and culverts weren't done, so there's like $8,000 left over there. The truck, when we purchased, or the new equipment, we purchased new equipment, and we ended up having sale of other equipment that basically gave us almost a $20,000 net benefit there, and then some other little things. So it's nice to go into the next year with that, because that will help allay whatever tax increase will happen. But that fund balance doesn't necessarily mean you have $50,000 extra in cash, because your cash flow and that are two different things. But that was a good thing to know. I did not get a chance yet to reconcile all the cash accounts and send all of that to you like I usually do. But it looks to me like the end of this month we'll have somewhere between $80,000 and $90,000. I think that is going to be enough to get us through until some tax revenues come in. We're going to have another meeting to talk about a couple of nuances when it comes to tax time, but I don't even have the grand list, so I can't even, please don't do that at the moment. All right, thank you, silence. I can't even begin to guess what the grand list is gonna look like, or talk about where we're gonna have to set taxes. So once we do that, we will have to have a meeting, whether it's a separate meeting, sub meeting to this or whatever. But I do think that some of our tax revenues are going to come in as they always have. I don't doubt that there's going to be more delinquencies and more delays than usual if the economic and climate persists. But all of the, we still have quite a number of other bills, I think, that will come in on time. So I think we're okay, long story short, without having to borrow for the municipality in advance of taxes. The other thing, actually I'll wait, because you're going to talk about it under your new business. You're going to talk about the truck purchase, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. So I'll hold off on saying anything about that. Bear in mind, just switching gears a little bit, that the closing of the loan for the water line expansion project is going to happen at the end of this month. So since the trustees approved that loan, somebody's going to have to be involved with that loan closing, but I don't have any of those documents. I'll just keep everyone apprised when that happens.
So Mary, do you know if they'll finish the project before the loan closes?
They have to. From what I've heard, that the last of the paving is supposed to be done by 18th, 19th, 20th, somewhere around in there.
Okay, because there's
Talking
a
about
lot of messy places.
Yeah.
About the improvement project or the?
The improvement project, the expansion project, not the PFOA, that's come and gone, that's all done.
Okay.
The improvement, the line improvement, or the line expansion project.
I thought that they had said that with the PFOA project that some years after, because it went through the federal program, that there would be documentation to sign later on in the process. But I was expecting Otter Creek or somebody to contact us about that. But
Was that federal, or wasn't that all paid through the legal settlement by St. Gobain? I think that was all St. Gobain.
okay, yeah, maybe the reason I'm thinking of it is because we applied for this grant so long ago.
Yes, it was ages ago.
Okay,
But this one, this loan that is closing now, this is the one that is triggering the big audit that will happen next year at some point.
yeah, and it just closing it means that it.
It is going from a line of credit to the USDA loan. Okay, and then the last thing I wanted to mention is that our electric vehicle charging station, that's not dead, but it's hard as heck to figure out who's on first with it. But I have made a couple of contacts. It is now with Green Mountain Power. They're the next step. They have to do certain, whatever it is Green Mountain Power does, approvals or verifications or whatever. And then once we get notified on that, then we can go ahead and order equipment and whatnot. And then we have the gentleman at the railroad that will be informed when we're doing all of that. But it's not dead, and we have until fall to finish it. So.
But we're working with somebody who installs these things on a regular basis, right? So
Right now, we don't have anyone, and we were told that just basically an electrician. That's all you need is an electrician. I had talked to Ben Hewlett. He had talked to Max a couple of times when Max was working on this. Then we will get, once Ben does his things, then yes, we will order equipment and have whoever it's purchased from will do an installation.
but we have to act as the contractor though?
It's an $11,000 project, so there's not much to contract.
Okay, all right. The electrician just tells you what to order, you order it, and then.
Well, the level 2 charger was specified in the grant. So there's different places you can purchase it from. And once we get that go ahead from Green Mountain Power, then I will reach back to can't remember their agency, but there are 2 contact people that I talked to earlier, a year ago when this started, and they are the experts on the charging stations. And BCRC is always a wonderful resource to point you in the appropriate direction and make contact. So.
Okay, great, thank you.
Can I just ask one question before Mary leaves, or Mary mutes, or whatever? So, the Vermont League of Cities and Towns issued some rules and statements regarding the collection of property taxes this year, and I believe that I sent it to everybody, and it's been a while now. And there were a lot of the issues were regarding the collection of property taxes and the suggestion of dividing the due dates for those into 4 sections to help people out who have been affected by the pandemic. Now, you wouldn't have to take that option, but that option would be available to you. And I'm not sure if you had seen that, Mary, or.
I did, and that's part of the thing. Personally, that's not one I would recommend.
Yeah, I
You
just,
have to have all of our tax bills engineered. You'd have 4 times the postage to send them all out. But I do think there are other options that I would want to bring to the board, which is involves adjusting interest or adjusting the penalty on late homestead filings. And that one I think is almost, again, I don't want to take up the time now without having a whole proposal in front of you, but I think that one is one that we almost certainly should do. With when you move the tax date, most of the, I'm concerned that a great many tax bills are going to come out from the grand list indicating that they're non-residential when you know they're not, because people haven't filed their homestead. And if they're not in by the 15th of April, or actually June 1st, and then the grand list comes out right at the end of June, there's a penalty involved. And I think that's one that we should absolutely waive. And then there are some other suggestions too. But as far as, yes, I did see that you could. Now, some places already have 2, 3, or 4 due dates.
right.
But it would be quite difficult for our 700 plus tax bills to do that. But there are other options I think that we have.
And we would, I am assuming that you would want people to contact you as soon as possible if they think they're going to have a problem paying, right?
Correct. And one of the things that I'm going to do this year is, as soon as I know that the grand list is available, and get that from, because I have to wait to get Bennington and Shaftesbury pieces. And then once that's available, we've always, the village has always waited until September 15th at the earliest to do those tax bills. But I'm going to try to do it at the very beginning of September, if not middle of August, if I can, even knowing that a great many of them will not be correct. But at least there's a way to get that out to people. And one of the things I thought we could also do is start telling people immediately. Don't even wait until November, if you can. And some people already do this. As soon as they see their tax bill, they start sending in a few $100s at a time. Or whatever it is that they can. So,
Mary, a large percentage of your payments come from mortgage companies, right?
that is correct. And they will all be on time.
Right. And so that's a stabilizing effect
Correct.
on our
Mhm.
on what's coming in.
Yeah.
But
And
there will be
if we go and say we now have different tax due dates and we now have payments through the year, that applies to them as well. You can't say if you have a mortgage, you can't do that, but if you pay it on your own, you can.
I know a lot of municipalities that do a quarterly thing, and they like that because of the the income kind of coming in through the year. But it sounds like a nightmare to me. Just not.
It just would require us to do things completely differently. And we don't have that many tax bills, and frankly, we would have to borrow. The village would end up having to borrow because we wouldn't be able to make the education component payments.
Good point.
So my
Mhm.
hope was as soon as I know a little more to get some notes out and a list to all of you with the questions and options that I think we could look at.
And the interest that you pay to borrow just goes back to the tax base, so that's really not what we want.
Correct.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so next we have the highway. I think I can speak to that a little bit. The Norm, and Justin have rented an excavator that is really functional for doing ditching, and so they've been doing basically all the ditches around North Bennington. They ditched Park Street and College and Harlan and River and just a ton of ditch work around where we're not digging new ditches, we're just clearing existing ones to make, because they're all grown in with, we want them to be grass line ditches, but if each year, stuff goes in and the grass grows up longer and it can't, and sticks and rocks and stuff get in there. So this is just a clearing it out, reestablishing the grass, and having the water flow properly off the road surface. So, and he just pointed out that as a piece of equipment, this is a really excellent machine. It's like the one that Bennington has, where it's a wheeled excavator, where the body can go back and forth on wheels, and the excavator is just completely independent on top of it, as opposed to our backhoe, which the boom has to, pivot around on the body of the machine and then dig out, and so it's a different. It's not as efficient, but it's also, you don't have the same lines of sight, and you can't always see where you're going with that boom. And so anyway, that may be something for future inquiry, but we won't be looking at that for several years, I'm sure. But maybe at the end of the life of our backhoe, we might consider, replacing that with something different rather than continuing with the backhoe. I think, seeing as we're discussing highway now anyway, and I don't think it's formally on the business part of the agenda. The only other thing is the purchase of the replacement F-350. So that was an email that went around. We got a quote from basically, as I understand it, it's kind of the only business in the immediate area that does this, but it's in New York, but it's Carmody Ford from New York, but they were able to give us the municipal rate for the state of Vermont, so all the state of Vermont purchases that type of truck for the same price. And so, because we're a municipality, we're eligible for that rate. So this is basically, you don't have to purchase the same stuff that Norm wants to put on the truck, but the base truck is the best price that we can get. So I don't think there's any point to trying to shop around to get a better deal on the truck, the base truck itself. There could be a discussion about the equipment that's put on it, but I also think that that's, based on what I know, which I'm certainly no expert, but I don't think that he's asking for anything to be put on the truck that's any different or excessive than what was already on the last one. So it's basically just the latest model. again, this is in line with our replacement schedule, which is that we want to try to keep these things on a schedule so that we realize some trade-in value and that we don't just run them into the ground and then and have to deal with all these repairs all of a sudden when we only have I think it's especially important with the big truck, but we do only have two of the small ones, and often when we need them, we need both of them. So.
John, why? So if this outfit in New York is willing to meet the Vermont standard or the Vermont bid numbers, is there a problem with going with a Vermont outfit, or is there something different? I mean, go on.
I think it would just be distance, honestly. I mean, you would, if you wanted, it might be Springfield or it's not Burlington, but it's like, Essex or something like that. I don't even think that the Rutland Ford dealership has the municipal, either they don't offer the municipal rate or they don't have the truck that we're looking for. But
I think the appeal is Carmony's is like a half hour away
yeah, it's just
or less.
Yeah.
And also, this rate expires in 2 days. 3 days.
Okay.
Can I ask a couple questions?
Of course you can.
Did this include a trade-in? Is this net with a trade-in? This is not, is it? Good. So,
He was going to shop that around. He was going to
yeah,
see what they were willing to offer as a trade, but then see whether he could do better.
good. So here's my comment then, is when we originally put together the capital plan for the vehicles, we were expecting to pay more than the $49,485 for this. So this price is even loaded like this, less than what we had expected that we were gonna pay when the schedule was put together. And there's no trade-in on here identified already. So that trade-in could go back to the reserve fund should we wish it to do that. I think that doesn't need to be decided now, but that's there. But the other thing I did want to point out is we have the $125,000 loan. We only used $2,465 out of this reserve. We had originally planned to use more than that, but then the trustees decided we should maybe go cautiously and take the full loan because we can pay it back, or a bigger loan. We can pay it back, principal at any time we want, or principal plus interest. So I would really suggest we take at least $10,000. We could probably take more, but let's just divide it, just split it and say $10,000 out of this reserve fund. It doesn't affect the cash balance. It doesn't affect the fund balance that will go in. And we will save a significant amount once the bill comes in January for the first payment, because we'll already have paid off a good 10, if not more of that. And we can do the same thing later when this truck is sold, the truck that we're replacing. When that is sold, if we don't need the cash elsewhere, we can then also put some of that towards the $125,000. But in my opinion, it'd be awfully nice to use the somewhat excess reserve that we have according to the replacement schedule here and pay down a little bit more of that loan.
I agree. I read that in your
I take Mary's advice on that and fully support it.
Okay.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the expense of, I just put it down there, but $49,485 for the replacement F-350 and to apply that $10,000 reserve. Did I word that correctly, Mary?
Sure.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, so moved. And is there a second? We don't need a second. Is there any objection to that or any further discussion that anyone would like to have? Okay, then by unanimous consent, we'll go ahead and have Norm execute that. And I think he usually has me sign a paper or two once he gets the contract. Okay. The other pseudo highway issue that's popped up is Tilson has, I don't know who, I'm not sure who's on the emails for these ones, but they're asking for a digging permit so that they can put one of those toppers on a telephone pole on Mechanic Street. And that was the first I had heard of it was a week ago. But they had already gone through the process. They got their certificate of public good, and they're basically just asking, what they're asking for a digging permit from Norm essentially to say if we disturb the road surface, what do we have to do? Do we have to, repave it, or how far off the pavement do we need to be, and stuff like that. I wasn't aware that it sounds like what they had suggested to us at the meeting a year or so ago for the plan for the Sage City parking lot was that it would just be a thing that goes on top of an existing pole and extends it by like 5 or 8 feet or something like that. This one, the specs on this one say it's going to be 45 feet. It's going to be it would be less than 50, but apparently if it is less than 50, then it doesn't require the full permitting process from agency of whatever, natural resources or whatever. And so I think they're just going ahead with this. I don't know what options we would have, but I can't exactly picture 45 feet, but I would think that that's a little bit taller than a standard telephone pole. Does anybody know the answer to that?
Yeah, I guess
Sounds like it would
this
be
is the,
significantly higher.
That's what I would think, but I don't really know.
Let me look out my window.
I guess this is the new normal, right? So we just, as I was alluding to with the previous presentation last month, we don't really have any say in this stuff. It's just, and they've learned that even entertaining a discussion with the local municipality is, fruitless for their progression on their project. So,
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean,
I thought that was the case only if it was on private land. If this is going on an existing pole on Mechanic Street,
right away, right?
that would be within our right of way. So I don't know how they can skip all of that process.
I think they're not skipping it. I think that there's a specific process that they're allowed to take that exempts them from local mean, I don't know if this particular project would be in violation of any particular bylaw in our plan, but it just seemed a little off to me that because it's one thing to just put something on top of an existing pole and sort of say, well, it's already there, and we're just adding a little height, but it sounds more like to me that in order to support this really high structure, they're going to replace the whole pole and make it, fatter and bigger and put like a, a much more robust pole in there because it's going to be taller. And they're just basically saying, well, we need to dig up. I don't know why they would need to dig unless they're replacing the pole.
What they're also doing is they're losing a lot of good faith, in my eyes anyway, with any future projects they need our approval for. Because I'll tell you right now, if they're going to forego all of that and go on their own, I'll be extremely skeptical on anything else they propose to our board.
And it's a different person on the email, but it is the same contractor that we were dealing with for Verizon. So I hope it's not a situation where they felt like, well, if they're not going to deal with us for the cell tower, then we'll just do it this other way, which we don't need any improvements. I hope that's not the case, but
You can hope all you want, but that's the case.
well, it doesn't have any. Right, it is the same contractor, so it seems that way, but it doesn't have anything to indicate that it's Verizon. I haven't heard that.
Do we know who the carrier is that they're providing this work for?
No,
And-
I think that question was asked, and they just said we're essentially the utility, and we provide this to multiple carriers, but we're not working for anyone.
We're just working for whoever. So has our attorney had any opinion about this?
That's part of the reason why I, wanted to bring it to the board is we certainly do have the option to submit the emails to the attorney and have him review it and give us an opinion as to whether we have any option or whether we just have to say, okay, I guess, thanks for letting us know.
I think we know the answer, but I still think it's worth doing that at whatever expense.
And if nothing else, you let Norm know that he is not in a position to make that determination until we talk to our lawyers, so we can at least slow the process down until we get more information.
Okay. I'll get on that.
Right. He doesn't seem too happy about being told this. Norm, is this the last straw where they just have to get permission from a highway foreman to do this work?
That's what the email sounded like they were trying to make it seem. Because they already have the certificate of public good. It's not like they're applying for it.
Wow. I would think we'd be notified about those type of things.
If somebody is digging on village property, don't they have to pay $1,000 and we hold it for the year until?
That's why I kind of didn't answer, I think it was Matthew's question, but I believe that Norm has already responded that it's a $50 fee and a $1,000 bond.
Okay,
So I think that was the answer that's already been given, but I will follow up with that and just say that we're going to have our attorney review it.
yeah, because we don't want to take a check if that to me would be like implicit approval if we start taking checks from people.
Right. Well, yeah, I think we could all. The opposite is true as well. Is that if somebody submits payment for a fee and we refuse it, I'm not sure we'd have to have a good reason to do that. But I think it's reasonable for us to say, hey, we want to review this before we accept that this is our only option. And again, it's not. I mean, maybe they're just going to say we're replacing the pole, and this is only 5 feet taller than a regular pole, and then it's not that big a deal. But it was not presented to us in the same way as the other projects were, so we really don't have any idea.
My opinion is they found the loophole that's been generated by a degradation in the last several years of any sort of local control. And, you know, they came to us about a tower, a 110-foot tower, and now they realized, well, the FCC is going to allow them to put what did you say, 45 feet? On probably what is, God, I'm not sure what it's, 30 max pole. And this now is considered just, standard whatever, and we have no say in it.
Yeah.
Where is the pole? Is it?
I think it's, I don't know. Just from memory, I think it's toward the top of Mechanic Street, though, like basically in a similar location to where the tower was.
I would assume it would have to be toward the top. If it's only 45 feet, they're going to have to get as high as they can.
Right. Let's just see if I can.
Right. So they can go up to 50. Is that the idea? Without some other trigger?
Yes, our pole with the attachment on top would be less than the 50 feet, which would meet the dimensional and height requirements under law.
So I just Googled and a typical telephone pole is 40 feet.
Well,
So it might not be that big. I mean, it might not, other than whatever the thing looks like when it's on top of there.
right, and I guess that's probably the idea, that they can get an approval and a certificate of public good without a hassle if it's, close enough to a telephone pole. I mean, because local governments could just say no willy-nilly to anybody that wants to do anything, even if it is basically just a telephone pole.
Apparently we
The flip
can't.
side is now you've got, instead of one tower, you've got 5 of those.
Yeah.
Because obviously they're not going to get the same reception they would off of 100 and whatever foot. So now every other pole is going to have one instead of just one.
And that was the G5 dream, right? That there's actually going to just be small transmitters on every other pole through every municipality, and the law has been set up through the FCC that doesn't require any sort of local input whatsoever. You ever been to Greenwich, New York?
Oh, yeah.
Those
Yeah.
little solar things they've got up all over.
The light,
That
the
early
big
kind
light.
of solar. The ugliest damn thing you ever saw in your life. And I like the concept, but that's what you're going to see. But it's not going to be solar. It's going to be cell towers.
Yeah, it does. I don't think he said, or I can't find specifically which pole it was that was, but he at least says in his email that he wants to have a discussion. So I'll try to have that,
Great.
and get it to Rob ASAP. Is there just on, let's see here, I want to make sure we'll get to our other agenda item, but the only other highway thing that I would have is that there's some erosion going on Hillside Street, the north side. So, so that was repaved last year as part of the PFOA project. It's really nice pavement, but there's no ditch on that road on either side, really. But it's the same thing that was happening on West Street, where it's kind of a similar layout actually, but the water runs, it is crowned, so the water on the left side runs down to the left side of the road, but there's a lot more grass over there to take it. But on the right side, there's a whole bunch of gravel driveways, and the water that sheets off the road just pulls the gravel right down and into the road or into the next person's property. And that would there isn't really an easy fix to that. You'd really have to kind of curb the whole thing and give people aprons on their driveways, and I don't think that's really where we want to go immediately. Several of the owners have more than just their driveway that is parking and gravel, so that does contribute a little bit, but parking is limited on that road too. So, but I think that I just wanted to let you know, and so my position was to try to work with Norm to figure out some kind of drainage plan for that street, and maybe we would do projects kind of like on a schedule, so that like we could start maybe at the bottom and 1 year, and then kind of work our way up over a period of time.
Do you know how many driveways there are, John?
There isn't that many. There's probably 6.
But you're talking about probably so we're talking about probably 6 culverts.
Well, that's what I don't want. I don't think it makes sense on that road to do a ditch and 6 culverts. That's just kind of. But if you curbed it so the water ran in the road down to the bottom, just like it is on West Street. So there's no ditch on West Street. It just runs down the side of the road essentially, and they call that a Cape Cod curb.
Yeah, so basically a blacktop curb. Yep. Okay.
Although we would have to deal with it at the bottom, because there's no storm drain at the bottom, so I don't know where that water would go, and we would have to plan for that before we do anything.
Where does it currently go?
It just goes out into the intersection. I don't think it does. I mean, it runs into people's yards and driveways and stuff, so it kind of loses a little steam, but what's left over does come down right in front of the church into that. It's a large intersection, so it's not that noticeable from the road from Water Street. But
So where's the closest catch? Got to be close to there, because if you think about the way that road's constructed, it comes a little bit downhill, coming in from the bridge, and there's a ton of water that comes from Water Street, and then Hillside. There's got to be something close by there.
I didn't see. I went over there and then I looked on. There actually is a. So I went over and I thought about that, but I didn't see anything specifically. And then I've been kind of stuck at home, but I looked on Google Maps and there actually is a street view, and I looked around and I can't see it.
Anything?
I think there might be one on Water Street in front of the church, but around the corner.
Yeah.
But
There's got to be something. There's got to be something there. There's way too many.
Yeah.
Unless it's a little bit further down once you head toward the Henry Bridge there, because that's where it still goes downhill that way. So it might all gather and go that way.
I don't think water, because the daycare place is right there, and I don't think water runs down in front of the daycare.
Okay.
In rain, but I think it probably comes down to Water Street and then comes back up a little to a drain on Water Street there in front of the church.
Okay.
But anyway, that's really neither here nor there. I just wanted to let you know. And I would like to ask to pursue further the possibility of having traffic control in some manner here. I've had a lot of people comment now that they're home more about the excessive speed on a couple different roads, but definitely Mechanic Street and what was the other one? Well, Park Street's always been kind of a problem, but that's for different reasons. I think people just like to speed down that road for some reason.
Well, recently there have been a lot of dirt bikes and ATVs on Park Street.
Yeah, I think there have been up this way too. Yeah, down by the lake. I think people are just
Or
but
Are you talking about petitioning the police department or actually hiring a sheriff?
well, I think actually I was actually talking to. I talked to the chair of the trustees of Old Bennington because they have Andy Corey do patrols there, and I think that's actually pretty effective for that area. I mean, he sits at the bottom of Monument, and then he sits up around the corner and has people roll through the stop sign there at Silk Road, Silk Road, I think. But I think that's pretty effective, actually, and he says it's effective. So, but they pay him, and they contract, I think, through Bennington Police, actually, which is weird. I thought it was through the sheriff, but it's actually, I think it's through Bennington Police.
Here's one.
Missed that.
Matt, you saying you miss have little kids coming in and saying goodnight?
I
Don't
do.
your daughters do that anymore?
No. No. No, it's very different.
Yeah, so I think, but I wouldn't. I mean, I'm not going to enter into a contract or anything, but I may ask what their contract is and sort of explore that more and bring it back to you for next month. I know that there isn't. I know that there may be questions about spending more money than we already do on police protection, but I think if we have an idea of what it costs and what the sort of benefit would be, then we'll see.
So, an historical perspective on that is back after 9/11, 2001, there were large federal grants for municipalities to hire extra police force, and we did that for, I don't know, Lori, maybe 3 years. Maybe we took advantage of that grant, and
Lori,
It-
hold on just a second, Lori, you're muted.
Again, it was about 4 years. Yeah.
And was there any
and well,
any noticeable difference?
So, what I remember specifically about it is we used to get some pretty good sized residual checks every month, which it was pretty amazing, the speeding that was going on and when it was caught. So, I thought it was a really great program. I think the grant was a wonderful thing. And it made people in the community feel a lot better too.
but I will say that once and that was through the sheriff's department, so we
Right.
hired the county sheriff efforts to do that. And frankly, once we were in their bag, there was less work they did here. And by the end of that contract, you wouldn't really see them around much. And in addition, at that time, I think Bennington stepped up a little bit. I think they felt a little slighted that we had finally made that move, and they were more present themselves.
Well, they weren't
And-
doing their job, and I think that they didn't feel good about that. And but I think the cost of that without the grant is almost prohibitive. For our small village, don't you think, Matt?
Like another 20 or 25,000 a year for
Right.
a certain number of hours that they
Yeah,
would
it was
provide.
only like 10 hours a week.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a lot of hours, and it was pretty expensive. But with the grant, I don't know. And I think it did work, and I think people knew there might be a presence there, and they'd slow down. So,
I'd like to explore the options because I just thought, I mean, somebody just passed somebody in front of my house today going up the hill. That's not the first time they've done that. Very dangerous, especially with so many kids on the street.
right.
I do see a lot more municipalities use the flashing deals, telling you that this is the speed limit. Manchester, Winhall, I've seen them down in Jamaica. Do anything. I mean, you have to bolster that with actually a cop sitting there doing the work. And it's temporary. Once that all goes away. But
I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but I would definitely want to be able to maintain some control too, though, and I would not want it to be just an excuse to see if they can catch people for other reasons. It's not just an excuse to pull somebody over, that's going 5 over so that you can search the car for drugs.
Yeah, but the truth is there is absolutely no control you can have over that.
Well, I don't know if that.
Once you invite them in and you contract them, you contract them to do their job, and they do their job as they see fit. I don't know what kind of control. We can't tell them that they're only invited here to write speeding tickets.
But we can decide whether we want them to be doing that. If they give us a hard time and say, well, if I think it's necessary, then I'm going to do that. Then we can account for that in our decision as to whether we think it's worth it.
I just think once you hire them, though, there is no control. They have their job and they do it. It's part of it is hiring the right person.
Yeah. Well,
I know that Old Bennington handpicks who they hire to do that. They had the same guy forever, they had a retired police officer that then was a sheriff, so they hand selected who they had to do it. So that could be some of the control we have is who we hire. Because you can hire a personal, as long as they're obviously in the department, you can hand select who you want to do it. So that could be the only control we have.
Mark, does that mean that you could hire someone as on their off hours, but they have to be part of the department?
Yeah, so Old Bennington at one point I want to get this right. He was either in the PD or in the sheriff's department, and in his off time, they hired him. So he was an official officer. You have to have an official officer, I believe. And he just took on extra hours through them. I'm sure you have to go through the department and everything else, but I'm pretty sure Wallingford does the same thing with the fellow they got up there who is very effective. But so you can hire
We all
him.
know about the Wallingford guy. Yeah.
Yeah, but they all take on hours outside of their regular scheduled hours. So that's where that comes in handy, is you can kind of schedule them whenever they want to. They can do as many hours as they want. And you can hand select them.
So, Jeff Whitesell, who lives in our community, just retired from the Winhall Police Department as police chief
Oh, did he retire?
after a number of years. He did, just the end of June. So, you know, maybe he'd like to take on some hours.
Yep, and I think
See what I'm
that's,
saying?
yep, I think that was the other officer they had in North Bennington, or in Old Bennington, was a retired officer.
Right, well, I'll look at all those options.
Yep.
Thanks for the other suggestions, I appreciate it. And seeing as we're on that topic, just to follow up on the noise ordinance, so I guess I wasn't necessarily wasn't clicking maybe with what Mark was saying the last meeting, but when we approve ordinances, I think we need to work on, you know, having a binder and making sure that we know what ordinances we're approving and that we have and all that stuff. And also, once we get the website going, having them there is going to help a lot too. But at the same time, when we approve an ordinance, we usually deliver it, or always deliver it to Bennington, because they're the ones who enforce it.
Right.
So they have it. And so when somebody calls about enforcement of an ordinance in North Bennington, they should know exactly what they're talking about and have a copy there. So I apologize for trying to reinvent the wheel there, because that should be fairly easy and straightforward to look at. Now, if they feel that the issue doesn't violate the ordinance, or if there's some problem with the ordinance, or a citizen wants to have us change an ordinance, that's all within our jurisdiction to do that. But as far as enforcing an ordinance that already exists, that really isn't our bag. Good. All right. So I don't have business from Development Review Board, Planning Commission, Fire Department. I can just say that the issue with that we discussed in executive session last meeting is still in a similar situation now. It just continues to be ongoing. But I don't think that that's an issue for our board at this stage. That's just an issue between the water department and the town of Shasberry and their water department, and that if we become a part of that at some point in the future, we'll deal with it at that stage. But right now, we are seeking a legal opinion on that through a municipal attorney. That's not Rob, because he has a conflict with this case, because he also represents Shaftesbury, so he's not representing either side in this. And so we would basically have our opinion for at some stage in the future if we needed to be more involved in that. As far as new business, we've adopted the rules of procedure, and there was a question about the location of the voting and a change there. So we were informed by the town clerk that that we were not going to have a polling place here in North Bennington for the primary and the November election, and the reason being, as I understand it, that that's very problematic for the Board of Civil Authority to provide workers to man the station. And that, you know, it's one thing for a person to come in and go out of a public building, but the people that have to be there all day with people coming in they're going to be essentially put in a position like Matthew has to deal with every day, and God forbid that happens. So, but that is really not anything that's in our. I think a citizen asked us whether there was anything we could do about it, but my thinking would be that that's the Bennington Board of Civil Authority, and that they should try to petition them or the Bennington Select Board.
And I fully agree that was the right decision to make, given, we don't know where we're going to be. But I think that could have been handled a little bit better instead of just reading it in paper. Sorry, y'all. In Northington, Old Bennington, wherever, you're gonna have to go to the firehouse in Bennington. I mean,
Yeah, and I just think, getting that postcard though, I'm pretty sure everybody got the postcard, and it's like, why weren't we doing this years ago? It's just order your ballot, send it back in, you're done. It's that easy, and I think that some people that are calling and saying, well, how am I going to get over? It's actually way easier now to vote than going even to the depot, because all you have to do is just take it from your mailbox and put it right back. Postage is prepaid. So
John, it's as easy as the quality of your voting list in any given town. I deliver mail to voters in at least 4 different townships, and some of them are just really great, and every address is perfect, and you know that you're getting a really good response from people, and that everybody's getting the mail. And then the town that has done anything with their voting list, and they get 70% of them back. And so that's disenfranchisement like you never believed, because they don't even know how to deal with that. My 2 cents.
That's right. And I definitely understand the people that, you rent an apartment or you move several times in a year, and that's a whole different deal. It's easy for us that live at the same house for 10 years or more, 20 years, 30 years. It's a no-brainer for us, but there should, and that's why I feel like we should be doing it, but that should be the minimum of what we should do. We should also have all the other methods to make sure our lists are good, and to reach out to people that don't have the consistent address. All right. Any other business for the good of the order here?
I've got one quick.
I do.
Yes. Great.
Go ahead, Mark, first.
Thanks. Norman mentioned a bit ago by one of my apartment buildings down across from Pangea, across Water Street. I have one of those apartment buildings. 2 of the trees are in desperate need of work. So I did contact Greater Heights, and they came down, and there's also a spruce that is on village property, which is in that little park. So I got some quotes, and I know there's some, I was hoping Norm would be here. I had actually talked to him about this a few weeks ago. So I got quotes on everything. I talked to Jeff Gray, our tree warden. He agrees that the spruce is certainly worthy of being taken out. Plus there are 3 trees on my property that could be taken out. To the grand total of $3,600, that some of that could be taken away by, so the spruce that's on village property would be $1,000. I think some of the cost could be absorbed too if we could take care of traffic control. And then obviously I would take care of, a portion of the cost for the trees that are on my property. I just wasn't sure how you all felt about that. Obviously I'm asking for some village help, at least with traffic control, which would curb the cost some, which would benefit both. And also the removal of that spruce. So in Jeff's opinion, it's not incredibly healthy. It probably wouldn't be deemed emergency, but it's certainly a tree that he would agree to take out with the opportunity of putting a better tree in that park. So I guess right now I'm just looking for what your opinion is. I've got to get back to Greater Heights. I've got to do something with those trees. The only other option is I wait till they fall, and it's a hell of a lot cheaper for me.
I don't see any issue there. I mean, we have a conflict of interest policy, and if you owned or worked for Greater Heights, that might be an issue because we're contracting with somebody who has a vested interest who's on the board. But if we negotiate with homeowners all the time to cost share on projects, and I don't think there's any problem there, which with a project that encompasses partial public and partial private. So I think that Norm can just work out what the cost share would be with you and what he could handle, because if we handle flagging or whatever, that's a savings to us too. So I don't see any problem there.
All right. So before I go and finalize anything with them, I'll talk to Norm tomorrow, run the numbers, make sure I know from Greater Heights how the breakdown will work, and then I guess I'm asking that, can we do this through it? The quote is only good for probably another 2 weeks. So is this something we can take care of through Norm and over email?
Yes, I think that's a Norm decision as long as the tree committee approves the cutting of a public tree.
Which they already have.
Right.
Well, so just to clarify, Mark, one of the 3 tree wardens, Jeff Gray, has agreed, but the tree committee has not, probably, unless you know better. And
No, I don't know better. No, I only spoke to Jeff, and he only gave his opinion on site. So I'm sure he hasn't brought it to the tree committee yet.
And so Emily and I are also tree wardens, and I actually agree with regard to, is this the tree that's up against Candace's?
Nope, it's all the way down.
Apartment?
Nope. So Candace is the green. It's the furthest from hers along that same wall. So mine is the white apartment building behind Candace's, still on Water Street. It's the one that sits right there on the corner. It's got dead limbs 3/4 of the way up, and then it is green above that.
No, I actually fully respect Jeff's opinion on this, and I just want to make sure that the committee, kind of does the right avenue, and I think you could make that happen pretty quick. And if you spoke with, say, Ron and Emily, for instance, my wife,
Yep.
that would be, I think, a quorum of that group, and I'm all for that. I do think I will say that John, I think it's a little more conflicty that we get on a project, and I don't say it's not a bad idea, but I don't think it's as clear cut as this, and it's because you're on our board.
Right,
whether
which
you're
is
not.
why I wouldn't be a part of approving this or not.
Right.
Well, we're not.
No, I'm for everything you propose. I don't want it to be, hey, the village is going to help out, and really they're not. And I deal with this with a couple other boards I'm on, where it's perceived conflict. It's not real.
Sure.
And if you're helping, if what you're doing is helping the village get rid of one of their problems, I'm all for it. I just want to be transparent about it.
Right, and that's one of so that was the whole precipice to this was, Norm approached me about those 2 trees and told me they're a hazard.
Okay, great.
And they are. I mean, if you look at them, they are leaning if they come down, they're coming down right across Water Street and in that park. They won't affect my building at all. And
What's the species? Are they maples or are they spruce also?
no, the only spruce is the village tree. There's a butternut, a box elder, and an elm.
Oh, okay.
And I believe the
So-
elm is
That's the spruce.
so that's the spruce, and then I've since cleaned out all that vegetation on the wall.
Yep.
So right to the right of the spruce, there's a very skinny, I believe that's the elm.
Yeah.
And then there's a box elder, and the last one is a butternut. The one that he's got his little hand thing on is the worst of the three in terms of health. All that green you see is gone because it was vines.
So,
None of that vegetation is from that tree.
so that's all junk. I mean, really, that is all junk. The spruce would be the only tree that you'd actually argue has some integrity, from my perspective. But I'm not sure why removing those. Well, you got a quote? You have more than one quote?
No, I only contacted
Greater Heights.
Greater Heights as a recommendation from Norm, just because he's worked with them and he knows that they are easy to work with, and they do a nice job with the village, and they also allow for cost sharing with flaggers.
Indeed, they do. So I'm going to go to the comparison of when we did that job with Jeff Gray on his project, on his, the wall and the this and that.
Yep.
I think if Greater Heights could just break down the cost differential between taking out this junk that you have
They
on
did.
your property compared to
I've got that.
our tree,
So I thought I said
Um,
Bruce is
it
$1,000.
seems to me.
I'm sorry.
Yep.
I've got the breakdown.
Yeah, you said that.
Yep. So the spruce is $1,000. The butternut is $1,060, and then they combine the box elder and the elm. And I believe the elm it's a single shoot up. I could take that down with a chainsaw. So they combine that price. So that price is $1,540. So the total cost is $3,600, and I believe that some of the savings could be there just in terms of hiring the flaggers. So the actual cost monetarily for the village is the $1,000 for the spruce.
$1,000 plus our flaggers,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
Yeah. I'm okay with that.
Good.
Thank you for the clarification, but yeah,
sure.
that's all junk, and it should go. So
Yeah, it's not only junk. It really is. It's going to come down, and
if we could plant something else a little bit inside the park, away from all the property lines, a single tree specimen, maybe two, after the fact, that's all good.
yeah, and I'm sure it would be a much more attractive. Whatever we plant there will look better than it does now.
And I will make that motion to authorize such action.
That's your prerogative to make a motion. I think that this is. I think that Mark is alerting us to the fact that it's his property, but that this is something that Norm would engage with private property owners with pretty regularly without board approval. So if you feel it's necessary to do a motion, we can go ahead. It's fine, but I think
Well, I think that the tree that is on village property does require board approval and a majority of the tree committee's signing off on that, which I don't think that'll be a problem.
And I
As
think
far-
as a board member proposing this, I would feel more comfortable if we actually formally
Okay.
did do something, just because it would take it out of my hands, because I'll obviously use myself from anything, but I would rather have you guys make a decision on it and not have it be me.
So the motion's been made, and is there any objection to the plan as described? And hearing none, then we would have, there would be 4 votes cast as unanimous with the abstention of
And shocker of all shockers, Matthew,
Yeah.
it's a park, and that tree removal may come out of park money without an argument, because I think it actually would be appropriate.
Well, you might have a conflict there, right? No, you wouldn't if you fought
No,
it.
I won't, because I don't make any decisions on parks. I just put it in front of you guys. All right, so I'll let you guys all know. I'll talk to Norm tomorrow, and I'll send out emails on what we come up with, and if there's anything further, we can reopen the issue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Lori, did you have one more issue?
I do. So after the village annual meeting, we neglected to elect a chair and a vice chair.
Thank you.
And we should do that now.
Yes, I appreciate you reminding me.
I
will
nominate
nominate-
John Lamson as chair.
Second.
Okay. Any objection to that? Okay, hearing none, that is approved. Is there a nomination for vice chair?
Matthew Patterson.
Is Matthew willing to serve as vice chair?
Yeah, sure.
Any objection? Hearing none, that is so approved. And as part of the reorganization, I think the other, were any other positions by vote or appointed, or are they all elected? I mean, the clerk and the treasurer are elected, and that was,
Right, and we did that. So no, and the tax collector also. So, and the secretary is hired. So no, that would be the only reorganizational piece that you would do at this for the village trustees, chair and vice chair.
and did we? Okay. Does anybody remember about a nomination to the water board? Did we do that last month or the month before? One of the two.
Yeah, we have done it recently, and I can't remember exactly, but I'll go through the minutes.
No, that's okay, as long as somebody else has a memory of that. And
It's the same old monkey show. It always is. Whatever. You know, it's just keep. You know,
Yeah,
I'm sure it's been done.
and it was. So
Lori, thank you for being our institutional foundation of knowledge, or fountain of knowledge, because holy Jesus. Well, I mean, really.
you're welcome, Matt. I've done it for 30 years.
And hopefully another 30 more.
Yeah, sure.
thank you very
Thank you.
much. All right, thanks, guys. Hey, it's only 8:56, so
Whoa,
I
now
appreciate,
we're
back.
back earlier than last month.
Yeah.
appreciate you hanging in there, and I know we've had some long meetings, and this isn't all that short, so I'm sorry, but I will try to keep it at this pace rather than the former.
Thanks.
Night, y'all.
Good night.
Thanks.
Bye. Bye.
Jim, I'll just end the meeting, all right?
You got it. Thank you very much.